You are currently the only person in this conference.
Hi, do I have Santiago on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. And it looks like Curtis, you were there as well? Perfect. And I think we have Dr. Dietrich. Is that you?
Yes, I'm on the line as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we're just going to let everyone else sign on. If I'm correct with the technology, we are talking, but no one else is dialed in can yet hear us. And then probably about a minute after 3, we'll enter the quote-unquote main room and begin the official program. Yeah, I see it. Okay, Christy, I think I see you. Are you there?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so we're still waiting. Dr. Dietrich, Christy, Santiago. Louis, I think I just saw you as well. Are you in?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Perfect. Okay, we're just going to give everyone else another minute, and more panelists.
It is. How are you?
We're doing great. Thanks so much for joining. I was just kind of when we're waiting on about 2 more people, so we'll get started very shortly.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
Thank you. I think I just saw Chair. Oh wait, nope. Just gotta put her in here.
Yes, I have Chairwoman Maloney for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Putting her on right now.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Chairwoman. My name is Connor. I'm with Christy Houlihan's office. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh gosh, well she's so special. How's her race coming? I hope she's got a terrible opponent so she can beat him very handily.
Well, she's on the call too, so I'll let her speak that. But
I'm laughing, Carolyn. I appreciate that. I am giggling, but thank you for the very kind words. We're working hard for everybody. That's the number one thing, is just do our jobs.
Well, I bet you passed the most important bill that anyone's passed as a freshman, extending health daycare and
I think
for the birth of a child for 2.1 million federal employees. That's a major accomplishment.
I am very proud to have worked with you on that. Definitely, very, very proud.
Thrilled about it. I worked on it for years.
I know. Well, I'm excited about this conversation. It's hard not to think about, kind of the biblical implications of always being counted. I think it's pretty important to talk about the
Right.
All right, everyone. So thank you, everyone. I think everyone has a run of shows, so Christy will kick it off, and then she'll pitch over to Chairwoman Maloney, and then I will kind of intercede in between each one just to transition between our speakers. Once we've gone through everyone, we'll take questions at the end from reporters. So is everyone ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Ready.
Yes.
All right, everybody, I'm going to transfer us into the main room. You will hear music for a hot second, and then hopefully you will hear my voice if all goes according to plan. So give me about 30 seconds here. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Connor, and I'm Representative Houlihan's Communications Director. Just to make sure that we're all being able to hear, please press 1 on your phones if you can hear this, just to make sure our technology looks good. Okay, perfect. That's a quorum there. All right, fantastic. Well, then I'm going to hand it over to Congresswoman Houlihan to get us started. Thank you so much. Let me just unmute you. Congresswoman Houlihan, you're on the line.
Great, Connor, and thank you guys so much for joining us today. And just to give you a little bit of a preamble, the chairwoman and I are in the middle of a vote series, and so there may be a point in time where we need to kind of be traveling during this conversation. So we will do our best to get through this and to find our way to be able to vote at the same time. So thank you all for being here today. Just to give you a little bit of background on this, Article 1, Section 2 of our Constitution states, "An enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States and within every subsequent term of 10 years, in such a manner as they shall by law direct." So the first census was held in 1790, and despite the fact that it has been over 2 centuries now, it's as important as ever, which is why I'm really grateful to be able to bring this group here today. We keep hearing that we need to fill out the census, but we're never really being able to be told why we need to fill out the census. So I hope that we might be able to clarify that a little bit. Recently, the Oversight Committee in Congress prepared a report providing details surrounding the census count in our Pennsylvania's 6th community. So here are some of the line items that leapt out at me. missing just one person in our community, comprised of Chester County and the southern parts of Berks County, could reduce health care funding by $1,746 per year, education funding by $774 per person, and job training by $128. And that's, again, only if we miss one person. So if there's just a 1% undercount of our community, we could be losing more than $12.3 million in federal funding for health care. If there's just a 1% undercount, our schools could lose nearly $192,500 in federal funding. And this is the equivalent of all of the textbooks that 770 students would need in a single year. So these numbers are definitely alarming, and they're really meant to be. To be counted is to be heard and to be seen. And if our community isn't fully counted, it will not be fully heard or fully seen. So in order to secure these federal dollars, to secure an accurate representation in Congress, each and every one of us has to fill out our 2020 census. And historically, the following areas of our community have been undercounted: Coatesville, Reading, and the Westchester area. And I have very much full faith that we can reverse that trend in these areas and across our district. So a few minutes of your time can help secure funding for school districts, prioritize civil rights initiatives through the Voting Rights Act, ensure food assistance, and so much more. So today I'm very, very excited to be joined by many of my colleagues, both from Washington and from our community and Commonwealth, to talk about the 2020 census and its incredibly grave significance and importance. And so without further ado, I'd love to introduce my chairwoman, Maloney, the chair of the House Oversight Committee on Oversight and Reform. Chairwoman, are you on the line, and would you be able to make a few remarks?
Yes, I am. And I want to thank my good friend and colleague, Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan, for organizing this event and for being such a tremendous partner in Congress on so many issues. Last year, she was a critical partner in our successful effort to establish the first comprehensive paid parental leave for federal employees. 2.1 million federal employees now have paid leave for the birth of a child because of Chrissy's work. And we were far around behind the rest of the world. There were only 2 countries in the world that did not have paid leave for the birth of a child: the great United States of America and Papua New Guinea. So because of Chrissy's work, we now have that, and we worked very closely to make that happen. Today, we are teaming up on another critical issue that affects every American's access to essential services and equal representation for the next decade, ensuring a full, fair, and accurate 2020 census. Make no mistake, this census has been under attack since the day President Trump took office. This afternoon, President Trump issued a memorandum seeking to remove undocumented immigrants from the congressional apportionment. To be clear, this is blatantly unconstitutional on multiple levels and demonstrates another craven attempt by President Trump to politicize the historically nonpartisan census for his own political gain. The Constitution makes 2 things perfectly clear: that Congress is empowered to determine how the census is conducted, not the president, and that representatives are apportioned according to the census, which must count the whole number of persons in each state, end quote. It could not be more clear, but this president has never cared much for either the Constitution or our institutional integrity that has kept our country strong and united. He previously failed in his unconstitutional attempt to add a citizenship question to the census when the Supreme Court ruled that his reasoning was, quote, contrived. And just last month, he appointed 2 partisan political operatives to positions at the Census Bureau that previously had not existed. This makes it all the more important to take the census into our own hands, have everyone participate, and secure the future of our communities for the next 10 years. The 2020 census will drive the distribution of over $1.5 trillion in federal funding for education, healthcare, jobs, even road and bridge repair. It will also determine who is and who is not included in new legislative districts at every level of government, from Congress to the school board. It is a keystone of our democracy, and we have only one chance to get it right every 10 years. This census comes at an unprecedented time as we face a public health crisis and global economic downturn. It is crucial for our communities to be fully counted. The census is vital to secure the funding our constituents are entitled to for critical services like education, medical care, and job programs. And we have worked with Congresswoman Houlihan to put together this staff report in order to provide specific information about the impact an undercount would have on Pennsylvania's 6th district. If Pennsylvania's 6th district is undercounted at the same levels as in 2010 and 2020, censuses would miss over 1,200 African Americans, over 1,500 Hispanics, 700 American Indians and Native Alaskans, and over 1,950 young children. This report also shows how much funding this district would lose for education, job programs, and other funding if people do not fill out their forms. So Representative Houlihan mentioned that for every 1% of the population missed in the 2020 census, the district would lose over $192,000 in federal funding for public education. And that's the equivalent of 770 textbooks. Additionally, a 1% undercount means your district would lose $104,000 for critical job programs like career counseling, mentoring, and apprenticeships. These are key services as we work to recover from the economic impact of the corona pandemic. The real message here is that in order to make sure this district gets the funds it is entitled to under the law, everyone needs to fill out their forms, their census forms now. And it just takes 5 minutes online, but will shape the future of your communities for the next 10 years. I urge everyone to log on to my2020census.gov and be counted today. With that, I thank the Congresswoman again for her leadership, her hard work, and her dedication. You are fortunate to have her in Pennsylvania 6 working with you. You all should know that she is working extremely hard in Washington for the people of her district, and she's fighting every single day for the funding you are entitled to under the law. She is an outstanding representative, and I'm proud to work with her on this report for her district. And I yield back.
Thank you, Chairwoman. That was very kind, and I want to reiterate what you said about the importance of filling out every living person in our community needs to be counted for the resources that we should frankly demand. And I also want to reiterate that numbers that I gave, that I provided, were for each year. And reminder to those who are listening that this is a 10-year census. It happens every 10 years, so the multiples are just extraordinary. I think at this point in time, I believe I'm turning this over to Connor to introduce our next guest.
Yes, thank you, Congresswoman. We are next going to hear from Luis Tovar, who is, the president of the Advisory Commission on Latino Affairs in Kenneth Square. Mr. Tovar, you should be on the line.
I am, and thank you very much, Connor and Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan. I really appreciate this opportunity. And I guess I'll start first with a little bit of background. You know, Kenneth Square is a 6,400 residents in our square mile in southern Chester County. And of those residents, we have about 51% Latinos or Latinx, because unlike the general assumption, when we reference to Latinos, we're talking about a particular sex or a country, and we are made up with at least 12, 15 different countries in Latin America represented in our small square mile. But as I focus and reflect on the census and why is it so important, I think there's some good commentary already about the importance of the funds that the government allocates based on census response. And for me, I 100% agree with why we do the census. And there's 3 points: to ensure equal opportunity, to educate our children, and to understand change. And all 3 pieces are very important and are elements that fit in very nicely with the atmosphere today that we're experiencing. with COVID-19, with rising unemployment, housing market the way it is, and education is really suffering at this point, and as well our children. In addition to that, I would say that the movement of Black Lives Matter has brought a not something new, but it's really ties back into the census and the information that keeps us abreast of how our country, how the makeup of our communities are changing. And by that I mean in the 1960 census, there was just such a small percentage of immigrants, mostly on the East Coast, West Coast, that were made up of largely many of the white races or white ethnicities, such as Soviet Union countries, Italians, Ireland, Austria, United Kingdom, and such. And Mexicans were a very small percentage of that. And now we find that it's a huge number. There's so many states now in our country that have immigrants, not only from Latin American countries, but from all over the world. And as a result of that, how that impacts our ability to provide very badly needed services, our numbers need to be represented in this census. So we have been on a campaign to share census information on ACOLA's, the Advisory Commission on Latino Affairs Facebook page. We partner with several nonprofits in our area and share postings. We get behind the COVID-19 information and spreading information in English and in Spanish-speaking countries. We also are looking for an awareness, if you will. With this COVID-19, a lot of our schools have gone and are planning to go deeper with remote learning. In our community, maybe 90% are in the agricultural, hard labor, construction, landscaping area of occupations, and those are not very well paid for, and benefits are rarely provided. And so this census is critical to our community, and it's critical for our community to participate in such process. The fact that many of our Latinx families don't have access to internet at home. Our school district here in Kenneth, Consolidated School District, it provided laptops. However, if you have to go to the local McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts to connect, it's not very effective, and quite frankly, it's a failure amongst Latinx students. They just falling behind because it's too difficult, and the choice of going to a Dunkin' Donuts to connect to a wireless system is less in priority than helping out the family by getting some kind of menial job to help supplement for the loss of income that many of these non-documented residents in our community don't have the luxury of unemployment or any of the relief that the administration has provided because they are undocumented. And so we feel this very sharply, and we have doing everything in our powers to help out in getting that folks to register and fill out the information for the census. And I guess lastly, I'll just say that based on the increase of immigrants and large representation of Latinx families and individuals, this census provides almost like a raw basic marketing plan. Our country is changing, our communities is changing. We need to adapt, and we need to focus on making us all better in terms of education and employment, so that we can be a better community, stronger community. And with my reference to Black Lives Matter, this is not something that is negative. It's revolutionary. It's a fact of life in our country, and we need to stand up and realize that we need to serve all our residents. And I think that that's the spirit that this Constitution was created in, and that's why we enjoy being in this country so much. So with that, I'll end my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tovar. Our next speaker is Dr. Dietrich. Dr. Julie Dietrich is the Director of External Affairs for Westchester University. Dr. Dietrich, you should be on the line now. Oh, wait, sorry. There, you should be on the line now, Dr. Dietrich.
Great, thank you very much. And I certainly echo the pride that we have in, for at the university and within the borough for Congresswoman Houlihan. She indeed is a superb, exemplary representative for our campus and local community. And I will say, so clearly with the Census 2020 and being such a significant part of the population within the borough of Westchester, the university indeed has a responsibility to make sure that we're doing all that we can to not only help with the count, but to get the most accurate count possible. And when this process began, the collection process, we had heard from both the borough of Westchester as well as Chester County and the work being done by the Chester County Commissioners. So we quickly worked to make sure that we were coordinating our efforts and not duplicating efforts. So I'm glad to have such great colleagues and partners that it became much more, again, a shared collective effort, as I think we might agree it ought to be. And so with that, we worked at the university early on in the spring semester to identify key individuals institution-wide. For example, off-campus student housing, the Office of Parent Programming, as well as our Center for International Programs, our Veterans Center, and other key partners throughout the university to make sure that we understood and got right the messaging, the communication around that, so clearly having our communications team involved. And so it was about approximately, I'd say, a dozen, as well as a student representatives that served in this capacity to make sure that we were, again, being able to answer most directly any questions that specific student cohorts may have and their comfort level in responding to the census. So we have already worked with, and in particular, we were asked as a university to do a group enumeration count. So as we all may be aware, some things changed due to the pandemic, and our students were at that point not physically on campus, but wanting to make sure, as I indicated, that we indeed were able to get the best count possible for students that would otherwise have been on campus, which is a little over 5,000 of our students that would typically be on campus during that spring term. So we have already collected data in working with our university housing as well as our affiliated university housing. So for example, our traditional residence halls as well as those that are operated and managed by the WCU Foundation, to make sure that we have all the data that is relevant that ought to be used and counted. And it is now being processed by enrollment management, because one of the things that we as a higher ed institution need to make sure that we do is that we comply with FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, as well as any students that might have submitted a non-disclosure statement, so that to make sure that their information was not being released, any directory information was not going forward. So we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we have collected all the data that would be relevant, as well as, like I said, making sure that we're in compliance as necessary. And moreover, as indicated by others, and the significance of the funding, the level of funding, and the services that it provides, that's clearly consistent with who we are as a university, and most directly our mission, which personally I take very seriously, and I'm glad to say is part of really our culture at the university, and that is that Westchester University is a community of educators to develop graduates who succeed personally and professionally and contribute to the common good. And clearly, again, as has been outlined, and I'm sure will be part of this further conversation, there is a responsibility, and I would say a moral responsibility that the institution has to make sure that we're playing our role as an anchor in the community and doing our part, not only for our students and others who reside, but also those within the local community. So I will look forward to hearing some of the other remarks and welcome questions when we have that as a portion of our segment today.
Thank you, Dr. Dietrich. Our next speaker is Michael Toledo. Michael is the CEO of Centro Hispano of Redding and Berks County. Michael, you should be on the line now, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate having an opportunity to talk about a topic that is so important to us in our greater Redding community and to the country. The 2020 census is going to have such an important impact in our community moving forward. Now, the Centro Hispano is a social service organization, a nonprofit that has been serving the greater Redding community for the last 50 years. And our mission is to help improve the quality of life for the families that we serve. And we do that through collaborations, through programs with other partners to help improve the quality of life for the families that we serve. Now, most of the individuals that we serve are vulnerable families that do need help and assistance. So, in terms of the work that we do with the Hispanic Center, in terms of meeting the needs of these families, these families are families that are benefiting from programs that are funded through, census data. So, for example, the 4 programs that I would say, again, are touching the families that we support and help the most are the medical assistance programs. Again, a lot of our families are on medical assistance that need help with their health and wellness. Families that are on the supplemental nutrition assistance program through the USDA, the SNAP program. Many of the families that we help, that we're supporting, are benefiting from support provided through that program. Head Start, another critically important program in our community and across the country, helping our young people, our most vulnerable, to get a head start on their education and making sure that they're going into kindergarten at the right level and not behind. And a program that the Hispanic Center directly participates in through the USDA is the Child and Adult Care Food Program, where we're making sure that our children in the community whose parents may be struggling right now because they're out of work due to the pandemic, are making sure that these children are getting nutritional meals so that they're not going hungry. So these are just 4 of the programs that, because due to the census count, due to the completion of the census, we get funding into our community to help us support these families through these very important programs. So the Hispanic Center has taken a leadership role in our community. We are a part of the Complete Count Committee for Berks County with a special focus on the city because, as we mentioned, the city of Redding of 88,000 in our city, with a population of 60% of our population that identify as Hispanic or Latino. In our Redding School District, where 16,000 students go to school, 85% of the students identify as Latino. So our ability to help lead in the importance of completing the census is critically important, especially in the city of Redding, given all the rhetoric, unfortunate rhetoric that we had heard throughout at the federal level regarding asking questions on the census regarding citizenship. I mean, it caused a lot of people in our community to be afraid to complete the census, to not want to complete the census for fear of retaliation. So we've been doing all that we can, working with our community partners through social media, through the radio, through other community partners in the newspaper, to try to educate and dispel the concerns and the fear that exists in our community around completing the census. At the Hispanic Center ourselves during the pandemic, we've helped complete over 620 census forms for families in our community. And if you extrapolate that, the funding that's received per family, multiply that over the next decade, we're talking about contributions of over $20 million just based on what the Hispanic Center was able to do in helping families to complete the census. We're partnering with our city of Reading today. It's having a census day as we speak, where members of the administration and community partners are going out neighborhood to neighborhood to raise awareness of the census, to make sure that families know that they can complete their census online, over the phone, and we have a phone banks ready to take calls here at the Hispanic Center today. Just another way of doing our part in terms of making sure that our community is doing all we can to raise awareness and to get people to complete their census. Again, we all have a role to play. It's a matter of just finding, what role we can play and encouraging our neighbors, encouraging the clients and consumers and families we work with on the importance of the census, why it's important to our district, and the positive impact it can have on all of us to improve the quality of life for all the families that we serve. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share the work that we're doing here in Reading and to just promote and the importance of the census for all of us who are within the district and in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And as Michael mentioned, Reading is having their Census Day today. So Mayor Moran unfortunately could not join us, but we do have a written statement from him. So I'm going to ask Santiago, who is working in our Reading office, to share that statement with the group. Santiago, all over to you.
Thank you, Connor. So I will be reading the statement on behalf of Mayor Eddie Moran on the 2020 census. So the 2020 census is a highly important matter to every city in the country, and Reading is not the exception. I acknowledge the impact it has on the funding we receive from the federal government to meet the transformation we envision for Reading. We kicked a year full of ideas to promote and encourage the participation in the census, and then COVID-19 happened. As Berks County moved into their green recovery phase, we transitioned from virtual platforms to be present in the community to raise awareness of the 2020 census. By the time of this statement is read, we will be celebrating Reading 2020 Census Day. City Council members, officials from the Census Bureau, and I are visiting low-rate self-response neighborhoods to raise awareness and help residents file their census questionnaires right then and there. We have also partnered with the Reading School District and local organizations to help us spread the word of the importance of participating in the census. We have 10 remote locations along our route with trained personnel and the technology to assist anyone that stops by to ask questions and complete the census. We continue to work to create partnerships with local businesses and organizations throughout the community. Organizations such as the Reading Public Library will have enumerators on site and ready to help residents. Local businesses are also contributing to the success of today's event. Some businesses are hosting remote census kiosks ready to help anyone. I also want to take a moment to thank Representative Chris Houlihan, the Complete Count Committee, and the county for the tremendous support and resources they provided to help us address the 2020 census in the city of Reading. The commitment you have shown to increase the response rates in Reading speaks volumes. We appreciate you. El censo 2020 es un asunto de gran importancia para cada ciudad del país y Reading no es la excepción. Reconozco el impacto que tiene en los fondos que recibimos para completar la transformación que visualizamos para Reading. Iniciamos el año llenos de ideas para atender el censo, luego pasó el COVID-19. Mientras el condado de Berks se mueve a la fase verde de recuperación, hemos retomado las estrategias que envuelven presencia física sobre las iniciativas virtuales. Al momento que se dé lectura a estas palabras, estaremos celebrando el Día del Censo de 2020 de Reading. Representantes de cada distrito, oficiales de la Oficina del Censo y yo visitaremos zonas demográficas con bajas tasas de respuesta para crear conciencia y asistir a los residentes a someter sus cuestionarios en este preciso momento. También, en una alianza con el Distrito Escolar de Reading y organizaciones locales, se añadirán 10 locaciones remotas con tecnología y personal adiestrado. Estamos trabajando entre otros esfuerzos y alianzas como las librerías públicas de Reading para tener enumerados físicamente con negocios locales para abrir más kioscos remotos y mucho más. No nos entendemos. Quisiera aprovechar el momento para agradecer al representante Chris Houlihan del Complete Count Committee y el condado por el enorme apoyo y recursos que hemos recibido para abordar el censo 2020. El compromiso que han demostrado para aumentar las respuestas de Reading es profundamente apreciado. Mayor Eddie Moran. Thank you.
Thank you, Santiago. At this point, I'm going to open it up to questions. So for our reporters on the line, if you just press 1 on your phone, you'll be entered into the queue. So if you have a question, please press 1. Okay, our first question, this is from Michael from CQ. Michael, you should be on the line now, sir.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't on mute. If either of the congresswomen are still on the call, I wanted to follow up about the memorandum that President Trump issued today. I was wondering what avenues the House might take to look at potentially opposing that. I'm particularly thinking that the CJS bill is going to be on the floor next week.
Yep, we have Chrissy on the line. Let me bring her back.
The question,
Chrissy, you should be on the line.
can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. And thanks very much for the question. And I think, the chairwoman definitely would be more qualified, obviously, from where she literally sits in her seat to answer that question in terms of what course of actions we have right now. But she is currently hosting a hearing, I believe, on that issue, or will be hosting one shortly on that, to try and explore what our opportunities and options are. I mean, I think basically, as she mentioned, that this is a situation where the Supreme Court has already emphatically declared that it is important that every living person in our communities be counted, and that it is not okay to ask for status in any form during the census process. And so now you're right, it is on the Congress to see what, if anything, we can do to continue to push back. But it's clear that the judiciary, the judicial branch, has already given us an answer on that particular situation.
All right. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Congresswoman. Looks like our next question comes from Karen at the Reading Eagle. Karen, you are on the line.
Hi. Thanks for holding this event. I wanted to ask those on the line if they have any ideas why some of the response rates are so low. As of this week, 48% of Reading households have answered or self-reported to the census. In 2010, that number was 62%. Is this the coronavirus? Is it what we've been talking about with some of the things that the Trump administration has tried to do, or is it a combination of all of these things?
Thank you, Karen. And I'd like to open it up to our panel, and I'll start with Michael. Toledo, if you have anything, and I've taken all of our panel, so they are now live. If any of you have anything to add to that question.
Yeah, I think it's, to answer the question, I think it's a couple things. I think you hit on them. I think number one, I think it was the rhetoric at the national level over the last, year, where, there was questions as it relates to, citizenship questions on the census. And there was just a lot of fear that was being stoked at the national level that people in the community were very concerned about. And the reality is a lot of the families, or many of the families that we may have in our community, whether they are undocumented, but we have a lot of mixed families too, where you have families that have U.S. citizens and some people who may not have U.S. citizens in them, where there is fear, concern. I think the pandemic has a huge role to play in this as well, in terms of just people not being able to go out, knock on doors and educate people. If there was no pandemic, the Hispanic Center would have been out more, maybe doing more public type events, things of that nature. So I think with the pandemic, the current crisis with COVID, but also the fear factor for a segment of our population in the community has a big role to play in why we're seeing the numbers low in parts of the city that have low census tracts.
Thank you, Michael. Would anyone else from our panel like to comment?
No, but I would like to comment on the last question, which is to say that it just received, while we've been talking, notice that there is an emergency hearing held by Chairwoman Maloney on this very issue. And so it is clear that there is action happening here on the House, and I'm speaking to you from just outside the floor right now.
Perfect. Thank you, Chrissy. And it looks like we have a question from Bill from the Daily Local. So, Bill, you should be on the line, sir.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. This is for the two congresswomen. How important is the census getting an accurate count in redistricting for Congress and all the other little offices and everything?
That's a great question, Bill, and thanks for asking it, because as we know, this is also determines how we district, based on numbers. And so in Pennsylvania, we are expecting that we are going to see a reduction in total numbers across the entire state. And as a consequence, there is a very strong possibility that Pennsylvania will no longer have its complement of 18 members of Congress, but rather might have 17. And so the census itself very much determines how many districts we have on the federal level, and how many we are able to have determines, of course, where those districts are outlined and where the outlines are. So it is very, very important, not just dollars, but also kind of how the districts are drawn is part of the census calculus.
All right. Last call for questions. Please press 1 if you have a question. But I think, it looks like we'll wrap up then. So I want to thank everybody for joining, reporters and panelists, and I'll hand it over to Congresswoman Houlihan for closing remarks.
Thanks, Connor. Very, very appreciative of everybody for being able to join us at this time about an important subject. And I wanted to reiterate that the numbers that the chairwoman and I provided in terms of lost opportunities for our community are in an annual basis, and the census, of course, happens every 10 years. I want to thank, of course, all of the panelists for joining us, and I think it needs to be said that I hope you all leave with one simple message to, not only for yourselves, but also for our communities. We need to fill out our census. Our participation makes a huge difference for our community, and as Bill said, for our state as well. I will like to end by just saying thank you very much for joining us, and please stay safe in our community.